Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one that has sent shockwaves across the geopolitical landscape. Belarus defying Putin's orders and standing against Moscow's expectations. For years, Belarus was considered one of Russia's closest and most loyal allies. The two nations shared not just borders, but a long history of political cooperation, military coordination, and economic dependence. Yet now, the unthinkable has happened. Belarus has chosen a path that openly contradicts the Kremlin's wishes, and the world is taking notice. To understand the gravity of this situation, we need to look back at how deep this relationship once was. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Belarus maintained an unusually close bond with Russia compared to other former Soviet states. President Alexander Lukashenko, often referred to as Europe's last dictator, relied on Moscow's financial aid, cheap energy, and military backing to sustain his government. In return, Belarus provided Russia with strategic access to Western borders and acted as a buffer state between NATO and Moscow. For decades, this alliance appeared unbreakable. But today, cracks are visible for all to see. The turning point began with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Belarus found itself trapped in a delicate position. While Lukashenko initially allowed Russian troops to use Belarusian territory as a launch pad for operations, the move backfired politically and economically. Western sanctions tightened around Belarus, foreign investors fled, and internal dissatisfaction grew among citizens who felt their country was being dragged into a war they never wanted. Despite the alliance, Lukashenko began to sense that Moscow's war was not a winning strategy, and that being tied too closely to it could destroy Belarus's fragile stability. Fast forward to now, and we are witnessing the clearest act of defiance yet. Reports suggest that Putin has been pushing Belarus to deepen its military integration with Russia, including hosting more Russian troops and deploying nuclear weapons as a show of strength to NATO. However, Belarus has quietly refused to follow all of Moscow's orders. Lukashenko has reportedly stalled on several strategic military demands, including full participation in Russia's defense maneuvers and restrictions on Western trade channels. This subtle yet significant resistance is being read by analysts as a message. Belarus wants independence from Moscow's shadow. The international community is interpreting Belarus's defiance as both surprising and strategically significant. For decades, Moscow viewed Minsk as its most dependable partner in Europe, even more so than countries like Serbia or Armenia. Belarus's sudden resistance signals a deep shift in regional dynamics. It's not that Belarus has turned pro-Western overnight, far from it, but Lukashenko appears to be charting a middle course. He wants to preserve his country's sovereignty without fully submitting to the Kremlin's control or facing total isolation from the West. In other words, Belarus is trying to survive by balancing on a very thin line between two powerful worlds. The question is, why now? The answer lies in political survival. Lukashenko understands that his own legitimacy depends on keeping internal peace and economic stability. Being drawn further into Russia's war could destroy both. The Belarusian economy has already been hit by Western sanctions, inflation, and reduced trade routes. Moreover, public sentiment in Belarus has shifted. Many citizens have grown weary of the government's loyalty to Moscow, especially as images of destruction from Ukraine have made headlines. Even among Lukashenko's loyal supporters, there's a growing recognition that too much dependence on Russia could mean losing Belarus's independence altogether. Another crucial factor is Russia's weakening global position. As Moscow's war drags on, it has become more isolated on the world stage. Its allies are fewer, and its leverage over its neighbors is not what it once was. Belarus likely sees this as an opportunity to reclaim some of its autonomy while Moscow is distracted. Lukashenko is a master of political survival. He knows when to bend and when to stand firm. By subtly resisting Putin's directives, he signals that Belarus is not just a puppet state, it's a nation with its own interests, trying to navigate between pressure from Russia and the demands of the West. The reaction from Moscow has been one of quiet frustration. Officially, the Kremlin continues to refer to Belarus as a close ally, but behind the scenes there is growing concern. Russian state media has started hinting at unreliable partners and independent tendencies in Minsk, which are clear signs of irritation. Putin's political strategy relies heavily on maintaining a loyal sphere of influence in the region, and losing Belarus, even symbolically, would be a major blow. It would demonstrate that Russia's influence, once thought unshakable, is starting to erode even among its traditional allies. Western analysts are closely watching this situation, interpreting Belarus's recent actions as an early sign of change in Eastern Europe. For decades, the region was defined by clear alliances, Russia on one side, NATO on the other. But now, those lines are blurring. Smaller nations are beginning to realize that aligning too closely with any one power can be dangerous. They're seeking flexibility, independence, and leverage. Belarus's defiance might inspire similar behavior in other states that have been under Moscow's orbit. Meanwhile, Western countries are quietly opening diplomatic doors to Minsk once again. While they don't fully trust Lukashenko, they see an opportunity to weaken Moscow's grip. A Belarus that maintains neutrality, or at least some distance from Russia, could serve as a geopolitical buffer, easing regional tensions. However, it's a delicate game for both sides. If Belarus moves too fast away from Moscow, it risks economic retaliation or even political destabilization from within. If it stays too close, it risks being consumed by Russia's declining fortunes. The symbolism of Belarus's defiance cannot be overstated. It represents a rare moment in modern geopolitics, a small, authoritarian state standing up to its much larger ally. Whether it's out of genuine independence or pure survival instinct, Belarus is rewriting the rules of its relationship with Moscow. The next few months will be crucial. If Lukashenko continues this path, it could lead to a slow but real separation between the two nations, with far-reaching consequences for Russia's regional power structure. As global tensions rise and alliances shift, Belarus's actions remind the world that loyalty in geopolitics is never permanent. Interests change, power dynamics evolve, and even the strongest partnerships can fracture under pressure. For Putin, it's a warning sign that his influence may be slipping not just abroad, but within his own sphere of allies. For the world, it's a reminder that the political map of Eastern Europe is far from stable. Belarus's decision to defy Putin's orders may seem small in the grand picture, but it's part of a much larger story. The story of how once dominant powers are being challenged by those they once controlled. It's a moment of transformation, one that could redefine not only Belarus's future, but also the balance of power across an entire region. And as the situation unfolds, one thing is clear. The alliance that once seemed unbreakable is now hanging by a thread, and the world is watching every move.